most people think 401k success is all about investments and market returns.
Yeah, they think they need to swing for the fences, and it's you get the lucky number, and then you're doing great.
No, it's more than that. But after working on thousands of plans over decades, we can tell you the math behind the scenes matters far more than people realize. We're talking matching formulas and vesting schedules.
If I'm only deferring a 1% in a paycheck into my 401k plan, I'm still getting the full company match, right?
Yeah, no, that's not. No, if you're only deferring 1%, the employer is only going to be matching 1%, all right? You can have all different kinds of formulas. They can be very basic. They can be very complex. A common safe harbor one is 100% of the first 4%. Or you can have 100% of the first 3% and 50% of the next 2%. Both of those are 4%, okay? You can actually have, it's legal, not in a safe harbor formula, you could have 25% of the first 1%, 50% of the next 2%, 100% of the next 6%. In other words, the more you defer, the larger your match is. You're going to have some testing problems with that, okay? So you need to pay attention to what your employer's matching formula is, and if you have the income, make sure you're deferring at least enough to get all of the match.
So vesting rules. If I leave my job tomorrow after 10 months, will I still get my 401k money?
Yes. The 401k money, employee money, you always get anything you rolled over from another IRA or from another employer. You're always 100% vested in that money. Discretionary match, discretionary profit sharing, those have vesting schedules. One of the most common one is 6-year graded. In other words, 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. In other words, you have to work for somebody 6 years before you're 100% vested. Another very common one is a 3-year cliff where you're 0 vested years 1, year 0, 1, and 2, and you're 100% vested after year 3, okay? If you keep working for employers that have 6-year graded vesting schedules and you're leaving every 3 years, yes, you get to keep all your employee money, but you're going to be leaving about half the employer money on the table. You're going to be leaving that in the plan behind you. Moving on to number 3.
So, plan design shapes outcomes. So, how will different 401k plan features affect my retirement goals?
There's a new one inside Secure 2.0 called automatic enrollment and automatic escalation. If you have a new 401k plan and more than 10 employees, you are going to have these features. Basically, it's passive enrollment. It's not mandatory enrollment. You are in the plan unless you actively opt out. And your deferral percentages are going to go up each year unless you actively reduce. Now, a lot of people don't pay attention to what they're told. A lot of people just let things happen. This means that this is going to have people have larger and larger account balances just by showing up for work. Safe harbor match versus traditional match. All right. So very quickly, safe harbor match is always 100% vested. Safe harbor match never has an hours or last day requirement in order to get the money. Safe harbor match has an in-service distribution rule that you can't take it out before 59 and a half. That's statute. Now, a traditional match doesn't mean you've already automatically passed testing. It can have a vesting schedule, and it can have an hours and a last day requirement in order to receive that match, and it's also eligible for an earlier in-service distribution. Okay. Now then, something else that seemed when we were seeing a lot of 401k stuff on Reddit, there was the belief that the only good match was the match that was done every pay period. All right, that's not a thing. You may think that, but the IRS and the DOL and the IRS doesn't think that, all right? It's what your plan document says, and it's what the employer is doing consistently for everybody, all right? That's what's important, and just because an employer is making a matching contribution at the end of the year does not mean they're a bad employer. They don't have any money. That's just how they're managing the plan. Okay, you do need to pay attention to what the plan design is. Are you part of an eligible class? How long do you have to wait? What are your options? Do you have a matching contribution? All right. Making sure that you are getting the most from the plan that it has to offer you is just as, or maybe even more important than understanding what the expense ratios are, whether they have index funds or actively managed funds or whatever. You need to understand how the plan operates, as well as understanding how the plan investments perform.
And I think the general idea of these plan changes get people into plans earlier. And the whole idea is if you get into plans earlier, that really impacts what you will have at your retirement, perhaps even more than it will be what your investments are.
Correct.
Because it's less heavy lifting if you're doing it in your 20s. If you're doing it in your 30s and 40s, you get to your 40s or 50s, you're hoping that you can hit home runs and have huge investment, but you really can't make up that time.
No. Earlier is better, definitely. Hidden math number 4, IRS distribution rules. Yes, there are times when the IRS makes you take your money out of the plan, okay?
And so, what are RMDs? Do I need to worry about them when retirement planning?
Yes. Okay. An RMD is a required minimum distribution. This is by default or by statute a taxable distribution. Okay. Age 73 is when the RMD comes into play. But if you're still if you're not an employee, excuse me, if you're not an owner and you're 75 years old, you're not subject to an RMD, okay? If you are an owner or no longer working, then you are subject to an RMD. And an RMD is not your entire account balance. It's a percentage of your account balance based on how old you are, all right?
So if you're 73 and all of your money is in Roth, you still need to do an RMD, but the taxes...
No, that's a change. Roth account balances are no longer subject to RMD in a 401k plan. Another reason.
So potentially you can squirrel away money and keep it there for a long
because you've already paid your taxes. I mean, it doesn't generate any tax revenue. Okay. Now then, so you do need to make sure that you understand, depending on how you're doing your Medicare planning, your Social Security planning, whatever planning you've got going on, make sure that you understand what's going to be coming out from an RMD point of view, so you understand the minimum amount you're going to be, the minimum amount that's going to be taxable income. All right, for those years.
Because in the end, you as a participant are responsible for the RMD.
Technically, yeah. It's the employee. Yeah, really, the employee is the first person to be responsible for that. Although the employers are always kind of on the hook. But this is another one of those things where you need to be curious. You need to be aware. You need to have some
self-aware that you're old.
And self-aware that you're old, and understand when you can take your money out and when you have to start taking your money out.
So if you want us to review your 401k plan for potential errors and opportunities, sign up with the link below. Also, click on the link below to find other video channels and podcasts. We've
got more than one.
Expanding our reach.
Yes.
So, Christopher, if they want to specifically ask you a question, or your team, what do? They
email us at sales@hunterbenefits.com. You know what to do with the like button, the subscribe, the whatever, the comment, okay? Tell your friends and neighbors about us, but most importantly, please don't forget to keep those cards and letters coming.
Toodaloo.